The United States Federal Reserve just got a new chairman. His name is Kevin Warsh. The United States president, the current United States president, appointed Kevin Warsh as the new Fed chair. And the term for the Fed chair is expected to last through May 21st, 2030. Who knows where the hell we're going to be at in 2030? But Bitcoin's going to be around for sure, whether we're here or not. But for now, let's analyze this new Fed chair and what it means for Bitcoin. Today, I'm going to talk about what Kevin Warsh thinks about Bitcoin. What does Kevin Warsh think about austerity, money printed, quantitative easing? And do we think that Kevin Warsh can be independent of the president as the Fed chair? You're watching Simulacra. I'm Bryson. We're talking all things Fed chair, Federal Reserve, Bitcoin, and how they affect each other. So when I was researching what the new Fed chair thought about Bitcoin, I was really pleasantly surprised, especially at his positions overall when it comes to crypto. The new Fed chair is on record saying that for investors under 40, Bitcoin functions as the new modern alternative to gold. Obviously, you know my position. It's an alternative to all fiat. It's not an alternative to gold. I think it complements gold, and gold will still be used. But Bitcoin is going to be the number one in terms of the reserve monetary standard. But Kevin Warsh said that Bitcoin makes sense in a portfolio when fiat currencies weaken. And we all know the classic chart of the purchasing power of the US dollar since 1913. It's lost 95% of its purchasing power since then. They've been printing a lot of money. They've been to a lot of wars. That leads to a lot of inflation. We have a Fed chair and a quote-unquote crypto president. But we have a Fed chair that really is not opposed to Bitcoin in the slightest. So that's a good sign. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. So before taking office, the financial disclosures or the financial positions that the person that is assumed to be the next Fed chair is involved in, all of that has to be brought to the surface. And so his financial disclosures revealed several investments in crypto funds, decentralized finance projects, and other blockchain infrastructure projects. And this is super interesting because I want to go through all of the crypto investments that he is really tapped into. Look at all these disclosed investments in crypto projects. Blast, Brave, Canvas XYZ. Let's look for some of the more popular ones. Crossman is a super popular NFT developer. There's a few on here. He's invested in a lot of stuff. He's got Polymarket on here, so he's made some good money in Polymarket. I don't love the betting markets platforms that have come out. I think betting is terrible for society, but what else is on here? He invested in Solana, so he is pretty tapped in terms of the crypto DeFi space. He's pretty tapped in. And this is a super cool quote that I came across from Kevin Warsh. Quote, "Bitcoin doesn't trouble me. I think of it as an important asset that can help inform policymakers when they're doing things right and wrong." And then he says, quote, "It is not a substitute to the dollar." I don't know if he believes that or not. He obviously has to say that as the soon-to-be Fed chair. That's concerning. So there's some things that are concerning. It seems like he is very invested in crypto at large. It doesn't seem he thinks that Bitcoin is the number one money that it is. And then he also says it's a modern alternative to gold. That kind of explains that he doesn't super understand Bitcoin. But he does say Bitcoin doesn't trouble him. So at least we know potentially in this term there won't be any attacks on the Bitcoin space from the federal government. And that leads me, when I'm talking about the federal government, into obviously quantitative easing, because that's all the federal government does. But what does Kevin Warsh think about austerity, money printing, quantitative easing, whatever words you want to use, putting more money out in the money supply? You're creating more money. What does he think about that? And so it's very interesting. So in the first round of quantitative easing after the 2008 financial crisis, Kevin Warsh agreed and voted along with the other members of the board to go ahead with quantitative easing. When it came to the second round of quantitative easing, and it's interesting to note, I should note, he voted for the first round of quantitative easing, but he also had a lot of concerns in that, hey, this is going to lead to inflation. Obviously, we print more money, it's going to lead to inflation. And so when the second round of quantitative easing came in, because the first round was really the immediate just plunger, we need a stopgap. We're bleeding. I say you should have just let the banks bleed, but that's just me. And so when it came to the second round, instead, the Fed did engage in a second round of quantitative easing, but he resisted that. And he ultimately resigned as a consequence of his resisting to the second round of quantitative easing. So it seems that the new Fed chair is at least not a proponent of just gross quantitative easing. He did it in a very precarious situation, being the immediate aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, and then decided not to agree with a second round of quantitative easing. He voted for it as the Fed governor at the time, but he argues that the injection of the funds was ultimately inflationary and should have been removed from the system as the emergency, the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash, passed. The ultimate question: do we think that Kevin Warsh can be independent of the current President of the United States, Donald Trump? We just laid out all of Kevin Warsh's pro-digital asset stances. We know that the President of the U.S. also uses digital assets, whether that be legally or illegally. That's not what I'm talking about in this video today. I support Bitcoin. I don't really support all the other fuckery that's happening out in the world. The president wants lower interest rates. That was the thing that he was hounding Jerome Powell about. I want lower interest rates. Jerome Powell's like, nah. And he wants lower interest rates so that the people closest to the money printer, the Cantillon effect, in effect, can print more money and get more money at a lower cost. I don't have to pay as much interest on it. And then I can go and charge people interest for using the money that I got at a lower interest rate. And so we know under lower interest rate environments, more money is printed. More money in the system means prices or inflation has to soak up all of the money, all of that new liquidity in the system. So inflation is going to go up with lower interest rates. But the new Fed chair seems to be against money printing. And so this is the crossroads that I'm seeing right now, is that our new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, seems to be very hawkish on keeping the budget, keeping the deficit down. But Trump just wants lower interest rates. He doesn't really care about the deficit because it doesn't really affect him. You just pass it on to the next president and the next president. Or you just pass it on to other countries because you have the US dollar as the world reserve currency. Ultimately, I don't really think it matters what Kevin Warsh's opinions are. I think because, if you don't know, the Federal Reserve is not a public entity. It's a private entity. It will continue to print money and make whatever interest rate it needs for its board members. The board members being the global transnational capitalists that control the entire U.S. government and central banking system. And so it doesn't really matter who the Fed chair is. I'm very appreciative that this new Fed chair is into Bitcoin and crypto at large, the NFTs and all the other stuff. But it's very good that he has spoken highly of Bitcoin. But I think the Fed chair is just going to capitulate to the president, because Well, one, I think we're just going to reach like an authoritative situation in this country that we haven't seen before. And B, I think it's ultimately not his decision. I don't think he would have been appointed if the Fed chair was not going to do what the global transnational capitalists wanted. Because the Federal Reserve is a private entity. It's funded by private banks. Those private banks get their money from private citizens. And guess what? Your little $1,000, my little $1,000 in our bank account, that's not funding the Federal Reserve. No. How the central banking works is that private oligarchy wealth level people pull their money together into banks. Those banks now control all of society. Those banks pull their money together to form the Federal Reserve. It's a cartel, and you're not in it. And so that's today's video. I appreciate everyone. Remember to send to your friends and family. Comment down below if you have any questions or any ideas that you want to put out into the universe. You've been watching Simulacra. I'm Bryson, and I'm out. Bye, everyone.